Sam sat on the afterdeck and watched the light fall from the loch. He thought of the contentment he'd once drawn from the rise and set of the sun. The down and the dawn over a calm sea had brought peace, prospect, hope, excitement. Now they crept upon him as a menacing reminder of all that remained undone. The red and orange retreat before him was the most peaceful he'd seen since his return. But it was hopeless. No quiet, no touch, no gentle benevolence or sympathy would settle him. He knew he'd succumb. He thought of how he'd tried to stick to what he knew when he got home, but therein lay the problem. There was little call for his questionable talents in the real world. It had been 20 years since he'd known anything else. Back then it had been boat work, so that was where he began. But he felt that notion slipping away, like the ashes he'd shaken into a gentle sea breeze. The only thing that had held him back thus far was Isla, their daughter. He stiffened, correcting himself. His daughter. For 3 days his little girl had suffered without him, as some half ahead from logistics thrashed around to get him replaced and repatriated from Bastion. He turned instead to imagining what had happened, outlines flickering like a slideshow in the fresh darkness. Isla had been placed with his parents, which was as good as it could possibly have been, but as soon as the news broke, he knew he'd never wear webbing again. His mind inclined to the practical during moments of extreme stress, a protection measure of sorts, an escape from emotion. For those 3 days he kept his grief at bay, slowly working through what he would do and how he would do it. He'd caught the whispers of others, most convinced he was in shock. He knew that not to be true, but said nothing. Perhaps he'd been conditioned. Perhaps it was just his nature. Either way, he'd just worked towards securing a way forward. His endgame was to wrap Isla in certainty, to assure her that nobody could harm her or him, and that she was safe. He knew how obsessed she could become with little things. He recalled being similar himself when he was small. Because of what had happened to her mam, she would be terrified of every noise at home, every opening of the front door, every coming and going. The solution presented itself in a straightforward fashion. They wouldn't live in a house. But then the problems crowded in as the head-banging judder of the transport flight rattled him all the way home. Nobody would buy their house. Not after what had happened. Occasionally he allowed himself the distraction and musings of retribution, before admonishing himself for such indulgences. If he was to be a single father, such plans could never be fulfilled. He tried half-heartedly to spurn such urges, but his planning was frequently overcome by them. In between such blistering impulses, he carved out their future. His only smiles came with thoughts of Isla, her nature. He suspected that one day she would follow in her mammy's footsteps. A frightening prospect. Isla had inherited her mam's kindness. He could see it in every subtle gesture she made. She was programmed to be as gentle as he was brutal. She deserved a beautiful life, to be sheltered from the type of conflict that had brought her mother and him together. Their meeting amid horror as she worked to preserve life and he to extinguish it.